Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to have another catch-up regarding what Brexiteers said they wanted to achieve compared with what they actually achieved. In this case, they said they wanted to reverse the deficit in our balance of trade, but the latest figures shows that it has widened. In fact, the latest trade data is, in many respects, the worst since records began in 1997. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So when it comes to the old Brexit arguments, you can essentially boil them down to three major types. First, being a rule maker, not a rule taker. Well, UK businesses are constantly hassling the UK government to adopt EU rules now so that they can trade more easily. But we're not deciding those rules. We used to. We used to make those rules. Now we don't. But we're still adopting the rules despite the lack of media attention. Second, reducing immigration. Bizarrely, Brexiteers use the example of immigration from North Africa as a reason to leave a European bloc. The end result is, of course, immigration is at a record high now. Now, in reality, that's caused by a few little things. It'll all settle down to be about the same as before. But the dynamics will be quite different. We have less immigration from Europe and way more from Africa and Asia. And the third thing was trade benefits. You know, these are little more than a sick joke now. Best exemplified by the way Australian journalists took the piss out of the UK over our Australia trade deal. But Farage and co talked a lot about our balance of trade. They focused on the fact that we imported more than we exported, as if that was a bad thing. But I'll come on to that later. But the thing is, guess what? The balance of trade has not reversed, but it's actually widened further. So is there any main purpose of Brexit still intact? But taking a look at this latest trade data. So this chart's interesting. When it comes to that trade balance specifically, you're not looking at the overall bar. That's made up of different components. It's the mid blue bar, the sort of mid-tone blue bar. For the 2022 data, which is now in, it's the largest it's ever been. Now, it's always been negative while we're in the single market, meaning we imported more than we exported, which is what got Brexiteers so riled up. But now it's actually at a record level. Almost like if it was such a big problem, Brexit doesn't seem to have been the answer. In fact, you could be forgiven for thinking it's actually just made things worse. One headline figure in the report is that the UK moved from a trade deficit of 0.2% of GDP in 2021 to 2.7% in 2022. Now, what's interesting is that it said that this was driven by a large increase in the value of imports, not exports. Now, when it comes to trade matters and Brexit, we left the customs union single market at the start of 2021. So it would be reasonable to wonder, well, hang on a minute, why would there have been this sudden increase in the value of imports in 2022, not 2021 when we left? Because we were outside single market customs union both those years. Multiple factors at play. It's worth considering the following. First, Brexit didn't happen all at once. There was a deliberate plan of phasing in elements of the hard Brexit in order to prevent the general public being alarmed. So although, yes, we left the customs union single market at the start of 2021, we have not actually applied all of the features of leaving the customs union and single market at that same time. The EU did, we didn't. In fact, we still haven't. We have very few customs controls in place and no standards controls at all, although they are now planned for next year. We will see. Second, that many producers in the UK will, of course, have attempted to carry on after Brexit. Some failed to do so. Now, obviously, no one will just go, oh, it's Brexit, we'll throw the towel in. As a result of production failing, however, due to the constraints of the hard Brexit that some companies were not able to overcome, production in some areas has gone into decline since we left the single market. But, we still want the stuff, right? So that means we've needed to increase our imports to compensate as time has gone on. So from that point of view, it would absolutely make sense that we'll have imported more in 2022 compared to 2021. But then third, these measures are in terms of the value of imports, not amounts. Now, I say always be wary there. Volumes are a little bit better when you're looking at, amounts of trade. Currency-based things, the value of imports will, of course, naturally increase as a result of high inflation, even outside the UK, as well as the weaker pound. There was, as I'm sure you'll remember, a real battering to the value of the pound last autumn, which is, of course, the time of the year when the levels of trade are greatest. You don't have a constant level of trade. It massively ramps up in the last few months, which is when we'd let Liz Truss blow a hole in our economy, right? So, yes, always be aware of inflation when you're looking at amounts of trade comparing one year to another in purely value terms. If it looks higher in one year compared to another, it doesn't mean we did more trade. We might have done less. It could just be that it's inflation making it look higher, which is why measuring it as a proportion of GDP, that is much more useful. Hardly ever happens, but that is much more useful. And regardless of the value of imports and exports in pounds, our deficit went from 0.2% in 2021 to 2.7% of GDP in 2022. That comparison you can make. Still, not to worry, I'm sure the CPTPP deal and the Memorandum of Understanding with Florida will sort it all out in the data by the time the election rolls around. But it is important to know, as I go through this, I want people to be understand, I'm not attacking the accounts deficit. Like, trade deficits are not bad. I'm not saying they're bad. They're not. We've existed with one during our best economic years. You know, I can get how they sound bad. I get that. But a trade deficit can be a sign of a strong economy. Because if you've got a strong economy and people are feeling flush, they buy more, they consume more. Well, that means you end up importing more because now people are consuming more than we can possibly produce in our own country. So we increase the number of imports, right? But we're not necessarily increasing the number of exports to match because not necessarily our export customers are as flush. So when you've got one economy doing really well, you can have that trade deficit. America runs a trade deficit all the time. Largest economy in the world. So you have to see it in context. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean as well that a trade deficit is automatically good. It's just that it's not automatically bad. Like, apply this context to last year. Do we think that lots of people in the UK in 2022 were feeling a bit flush and spending money like it was going out of fashion? No, the cost of living crisis was seriously biting all of last year. You know, people were having to cut back on things. We knew about that. It was even reaching the sort of middle classes. So the trade deficit widening last year cannot be taken as a sign of a strong economy. But you have to look at the context. We know that people didn't feel the need to consume extra due to a strong economy. That was not occurring. We were doing so out of necessity because our own production was being hit. And the reason I point out this widening of the deficit, it's not, as I say, because the deficit is itself bad. It's not. It's because Brexiteers said it was bad. Well, now it's widening. So is it bad or is it not? If it's bad, then Brexit hasn't solved that issue, has it? If it's not bad, then this is another Brexit lie to add to the pile. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.